Shalom and welcome to 2 Minutes of Torah. This year is entitled Daf Yomi Yevamot, Daf Lamed Bet Amid Bet. The Gemara talks about the concept of Kvura Bein Rishaim Gemurim, burying a person near a Rasha. Some have the Girsa Kvura Bein Rishaim Chamurim. Even someone who's a Rasha cannot be buried next to someone who's more of a Rasha. It's a fascinating topic, talking about a person who's Chayav Misas Beistin, burying him near someone else. And the Shach actually brings this down in the halachas of Kvura. And the Shach in Yoreh Daiah Siman Shin Samach Bet writes the following: Ein kovrin Rasha eitzel tzadik. A Rasha cannot be buried near a tzadik. Afilu Rasha chamor eitzel Rasha kal. So he has the nusach, the text of Rasha Chamor, even one who is more of a Rasha than another Rasha. He's violated more Isurim. He'd be chayav a different level of Misas Beistin than another Rasha. One should not be near another one. Ein kovrin tzaddik, and a tzaddik should not be buried near a kosher b'beinani eitzav chassid muflag, and a tzaddik, and especially a Beinoni, a simple person, should not be buried next to a chassid muflag, person who is just on a very, very high level, more than a tzaddik. But a Baal Tshuva, he can be buried next to a tzaddik. So it's a fascinating discussion. And of course, the commentators discuss why we should not have one buried near another one. But the fascinating question is, halacha l'maisa, what do we do here? Is this something which person has to be careful who he's buried next to? It sounds like a very complicated and a very delicate question in terms of burying in the cemetery and who to be buried near, and you don't want to be buried near that person. It could certainly lead to some controversial and emotional issues here. One point that would help out a bit is the Igroth Moshe, Yoreh Daiah Bet. Igroth Moshe writes the following in Siman Kuf Nun Bet. They asked Rav Moshe about burying in Baltimore. This is in 1960s, where there's different people in the cemetery, some not religious, they were not observant. What do you do? So Rav Moshe has an interesting point here. He writes, Ein kovrin Rasha eitzel tzadik, dina d'oraita. He says it's a dina d'oraita, very serious din. Me'alach l'Moshe miSinai. Because you see that there were different cemeteries for the different levels of the Chayav Misas Beistin. So you see that it's already now Masorah way back. The din zeh and this applies today as well. So Rav Moshe says it sounds like this could be a very complicated matter. How are you going to bury people in the cemetery? You have to check who's buried next to you. And he writes, Kol's man, shein meforsam lemachalel Shabbat. If the person is not halachically meforsam, known as a machalel Shabbos, af sheyodim ezi yachidim. So yeah, some people know that he's not so careful about Shabbos. Kevan shelahaita hadab b'fanav, from they based and there wasn't a formal testimony, then he may not be defined as a machalel Shabbos. She'ein lanu edim al zeh. And therefore, since you don't have a proper testimony, he's not defined as a Machalel Shabbos and as a Rasha, and therefore you don't have to protest, I can't, my burial plot cannot be near this person's burial plot. Umemela Kestam Yisrael, Shemuta Lakov V'Samol Stam Anashim, Shem Chetzke Shomri Torah. So Moshe says that it's not so quick who we are going to define as a Rasha, and therefore a person cannot be buried near such a person. This is just one aspect of the tshuva. He goes on and writes about other details as well. And of course, this topic, like any topic, a bit of an emotional one, a delicate one, and a sensitive one, of course, must be approached in a halachic manner with proper psak from a Yoreh Daiah. Shalom.